says 456 kilobits per second bandwidth.
Should be okay.
Anyway, so there's Burnout, and he told me that it was a really interesting book, and it was probably one of the first first works of kind of like Burnout,
Gonzo journalism,
anti-classical literature. Yeah, gonzo journalism. That's a word.
Nice.
Does anyone? Do you know anything about Hunter S. Thompson? Have you heard him talk?
Yeah, I watched a documentary on him a while back. It was pretty interesting.
What do you think about him?
He's a really interesting guy.
Yeah.
I think the whole like his style of journalism is also like really interesting and gives like a different take that I think is
and then
welcome.
He tries to. I think what distinguishes, and I haven't read about gonzo journalism or read anything from Hunter S. Thompson in a while, but what I remember distinctly is essentially that gonzo journalism, this genre, is essentially, instead of the journalist being a passive like a bystander witnessing something, that the journalist becomes an active participant and becomes part of the story themselves in order to fully understand, in order to fully integrate themselves in the situation. And I would say that's like to some extent what we try to practice here. Like when we go covering protests or genocide or whatever we're doing, political corruption, we're not just going there and taking videos. We're trying to get in the middle, talk to people, like take a side, get ourselves inside. And that's what I appreciate about him in general.
There's also similar, like related to that, something that I think we try to do or like be upfront about is like that we don't pretend that there's some like neutrality bias where we're like, oh, I don't know, like this side says this and this side. Like we're pretty open about like where our biases come from and what our opinions on stuff are, which I think is something that a lot of like new media journalism is moving towards, and I think it's refreshing to a lot of people because everyone knows that like even these mainstream, the
lamestream
media with their like old school journalism tactics, we know that they have biases, but they just like pretend like they don't. They're like, oh no, I'm above the fray somehow, and
Your
I don't
bias
have
is showing.
opinions.
Cover up the hot tub, folks.
Buddy,
No more yoga.
Come on, Jeff Bezos.
No more neutrality yoga. Look, I call this one. We slowly transfer from downward dog into fence sitting. My favorite pose.
Ugh. All right. Well, without further ado, we can start the book. And I think anything you want to say, any kind of like things that we can talk about, any tangents to the book are interesting. And yeah.
We're going to be shooting the spit, bud. There's going to be a lot of...
Here we go again with that sexual language.
There's going to be a lot of nonsense.
So the book begins with this quote. He who makes a beast of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man. And this is a quote from Dr. Johnson.
Isn't that Trump's doctor?
I remember the quote because like there's an Avenged Sevenfold video from also around the same time that I read the book.
Speaking of destroying mainstream narratives.
Well, it was really coincidental because that book like came out a long time ago, and right around when I read the book, they came out with this music video, which was basically loosely based on the Fear and Loathing movie / book, whatever. And anyway, the idea is that the way that I've processed it basically is if you feel like you don't have to confine yourself to these societal rules so closely, then you free yourself of some of these strictures. All these things that you have to be. You have to act like a gentleman. You have to act like a middle class person. You have to follow the rules of politeness. You have to, wear your shirt, tuck your shirt in, put your shoes on, tie your laces,
take showers indoors.
That's a direct stab at me.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I think that all these things need to be questioned and sometimes destroyed.
The idea that you let go of some of these societal, these structural rules, and suddenly some of the pain just disappears. You can find yourself more. There's a mosquito here. I don't know. I like it. And what's the name of the music video, that song? Bat Country.
Oh man, you're making my A7X tattoo itch right now talking about all this event.
All right, I'm going to start the book. So, by the way, the book is illustrated, and if anyone's interested in the original book, check it out from the Lear's library to you.
Yeah, you can find it, I'm sure, pretty easily.
The illustrations are quite good. Okay. So, I'm trying to be as Hunter S. Thompson as possible right now, and the painkillers, the off-brand Taiwanese painkillers I'm taking, mixed with the antibiotics.
We should have got a couple airsoft rifles or something to wave around, like
Have a taser.
a fake 44 mag, yeah, like
Just
popping off
randomly
the
tasing
taser.
each other.
Yeah.
We were some. Go ahead.
As we move along, like, because we're not going to do the whole book obviously in one sitting. As we move along, maybe we'll bring in more props. We'll become prop comics, Hunter S. Thompson prop comics.
We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, "I feel a bit lightheaded. Maybe you should drive." And suddenly, there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping and screeching and driving around the car, which was going about 100 miles an hour with the top down to Las Vegas. And a voice was screaming, "Holy Jesus, what are these goddamn animals?"
Holy Jesus, what are these goddamn animals?
Well, the neighbors are going to be really upset about this. Then it was quiet again. My attorney had taken his shirt off and was pouring beer on his chest to facilitate the tanning process.
This may not be allowed on Twitch, by the way. Shirtless men.
"What the hell are you yelling about?" he muttered, staring up at the sun with his eyes closed and covered in a wraparound Spanish sunglasses. "Never mind," I said. "It's your turn to drive." I hit the brakes and aimed at the great red shark toward the shoulder of the highway. No point mentioning those bats, I thought. The poor bastard will see them soon enough. It was almost noon, and we still had more than 100 miles to go. They would be tough miles. Very soon, I knew, we would both be complete. Oh, there's a mite. There's a little mite crawling on the e-reader. 100 miles to go. They would be tough miles. Very soon, I knew, we would both be completely twisted, but there was no going back, no time to rest. We would have to ride it out. Press registration for the fabulous Mint 400 was already underway, and we had to get there by 4 to claim our soundproof suite. So where do you think they're coming from? LA? LA to Las Vegas?
Sounds potential. I mean, they're coming. It sounds like they're coming
Francisco?
through the desert, right? So it's
It's desert on all sides.
yeah,
bud.
exactly. So it's a little bit tough to call. Maybe coming from southeast.
The southeast. Not that high, bud.
I mean, from the direction of southeast. Obviously, not from like South Carolina or something. Like from
Phoenix.
New Mexico, Texas, like that way. I don't know.
I have a feeling it's California. Let's find out.
We'll find out.
A fashionable sporting magazine in New York had taken care of the reservations, along with this huge red Chevy convertible we just rented off a lot on the Sunset Strip. So there you go, California.
There you go.
And I was, after all, a professional journalist, so I had an obligation to cover this story for good or ill. The sporting editors had also given me $300 in cash. $300 in the 1970s was a lot.
Ching.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. Most of which was already spent on extremely dangerous drugs. The trunk of the car looked a lot like a mobile police narcotics lab. We had 2 bags of grass, 75 pellets of mescaline, 5 sheets of high-powered blotter acid, a salt shaker half full of cocaine, and a whole galaxy of multicolored uppers, downers, screamers, laughers. And also a quart of tequila, a quart of rum, a case of Bud Weiser, a pint of raw ether, and 24 amyls. Ooh, I know what he's about to do with his attorney.
Yeah,
That
wow.
Soundproof room. Well, you know what amyls are, right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Nice.
Is that a slur? Ugh.
Ooh.
All of this had been rounded up the night before in a frenzy of high-speed driving all over Los Angeles County from Topanga to Watts. We picked up everything we could get our hands on. Not that we needed all that for the trip, but once you get locked into a serious drug collection, the tendency is to push it as far as you can. The only thing that really worried me was the ether. There's nothing in the world more helpless and irresponsible and depraved than a man in the depths of an ether binge. And I knew we'd probably get that pretty rotten stuff pretty soon. Probably at the next gas station. We'd sampled almost everything else, and now, yes, it was time for a long snort of ether. And then do the next 100 miles in a horrible, slobbering sort of spastic stupor. The only way to keep alert on ether is to do a lot of amyls. Not all at once, but steadily. Just enough to maintain the focus at 90 miles an hour to Barstow. Through Barstow. Man, this is the way to travel, said my attorney. Should we trade soon? Am I the only one reading, or are we going to trade? What do you think?
Well, that's the question is, are we going to trade each time, or are we going to trade after a certain amount of time?
I don't know. The painkillers are starting to wear me down already.
Sounds like perfect for you to be reading then.
I can keep reading. I'm just wondering because your face, bud.
I can read if you want.
You're
me to.
enjoying this. All
I
right.
am. I love it.
Man, this is the way to travel, said my attorney. He leaned over to turn the volume up on the radio, humming along with the rhythm section and kind of moaning the words. One toke over the line, sweet Jesus. One toke over the line. I don't know if this is a real song.
It is. You don't know that song?
No.
Oh, yeah, it is a real song.
By who? For who? About what?
It's you know what it's about. One toke over the line.
It's a racing song. It's about like doing the wheelbarrow races at your church camp.
Grab on my leg, sweet baby, we're a wheelbarrow over the line.
So who sung it?
I don't know. It's before my time, bud. But I've heard the song on the radio before.
One toke, you poor fool. Wait till you see those goddamn bats. I could barely hear the radio. Slumped over the far side of the seat, grappling with the tape recorder turned all the way up on Sympathy for the Devil. That was the only tape we had, so we played it constantly, over and over, as a kind of demented counterpoint to the radio. Wait, so they're listening to a tape and with the radio on at the same time, which is kind of interesting.
It's nice.
A constant speed is good for gas mileage, and for some reason, that seemed important at the time. Indeed, on a trip like this, one must be careful about gas consumption. Avoid those quick bursts of acceleration that drag blood to the back of the brain. My attorney saw the hitchhiker long before I did. Let's give this boy a lift, he said. And before I could mount any argument, he was stopped, and this poor Okie kid was running up the damn car with a big grin on his face saying, "Hot damn, I never rode in a convertible before."
Hell yeah, Okie from Muskogee, baby.
Is that right? I said. Well, I guess you're about ready, eh? The kid nodded gingerly as we roared off. We're your friends, said my attorney. We're not like the others. Oh, Christ, I thought. He's gone around the bend. No more of that talk, I said sharply, or I'll put the leeches on you. He grinned, seeming to understand. Luckily, the noise in the car was so awful between the wind and the radio and the tape machine that the kid in the back seat couldn't hear a word we were saying. Or could he? How long can we maintain, I wondered. How long before one of us starts raving and jabbering at this boy? What will he think then? The same lonely desert was the last home of the Manson family. Will he make that grim connection when my attorney starts screaming about bats and huge manta rays coming down on the car? If so, well, he'll just have to cut his head off. We'll just have to cut his head off and bury him somewhere. Because it goes without saying that we can't turn him loose. He'll report us at once to some kind of outback Nazi law enforcement agency, and they'll run us down like dogs. Jesus, did I say that, or did I think it? Was I talking? Did they hear me? I glanced over at my attorney. He seemed oblivious, watching the road, driving our great red shark along at 110 or so. There was no sound from the back seat. Maybe I'd rather have a chat with this boy, I thought. Perhaps if I explain things, he'll rest easy. Of course, I leaned around in the seat, gave him a big, fine smile, admiring the shape of his skull. By the way, I said, there's one thing you should probably understand. He stared at me, not blinking. Was he gritting his teeth? Can you hear me? I yelled. He nodded. That's good, I said, because I want you to know that we are on our way to Las Vegas to find the American dream. I smiled. That's why we rented this car. It was the only way to do it. Can you grasp that? He nodded again, but his eyes were nervous. I want you to have all the background, I said, because this is a very ominous assignment with overtones of extreme personal danger. Hell, I forgot all about the beer. You want some? He shook his head. How about some ether, I said. What? Never mind. Let's get right to the heart of this thing. You see, about 24 hours ago, we were sitting in the polo lounge of the Beverly Hills Hotel, in the patio section, of course. And we were just sitting there under the palm tree when this uniformed dwarf came up to me with a pink telephone and said, "This must be the call you've been waiting for all the time, sir." I laughed and ripped open the beer can that foamed all over the back seat while I'd been talking. And you know, he was right. I'd been expecting this call. But I didn't know who it would come from. Do you follow me? The boy's face was a mask of pure fear and bewilderment. I blundered on. I want you to understand that this man at the wheel is my attorney. He's not just some dingbat I found in the strip. Shit, look at him. He doesn't look like you or me, right? It's because he's a foreigner. I think he's probably some Samoan, but it doesn't matter, does it? Are you prejudiced? Oh, hell no, he blurted. I didn't think so, because in spite of his race, this man is extremely valuable to me. I glanced over at my attorney, but his mind was somewhere else. I whacked at the back of the driver's seat with my fist. This is important, goddammit. This is a true story. The car swerved sickeningly, then straightened out. Keep your hands on my fucking neck, my attorney screamed. Off my neck. The kid in the back looked like he was ready to jump right at the car and take his chances. Our vibrations were getting nasty, but why? I was puzzled, frustrated. Was there no communication in this car? Had we deteriorated to the level of dumb beasts? What are you looking up?
Just editing the stream.
Because my story was true. I was certain of this. And it was extremely important, I felt, for the meaning of our journey to be made absolutely clear. We had been sitting there in the polo lounge for many hours, drinking Singapore slings with mezcal on the side and beer chasers. And when the call came, I was ready. What's a Singapore sling?
I don't know. What is a Singapore sling?
Well, it's a drink, but what's in it? And mezcal is what? Like agave liquor or some shit? Mezcal. I've heard of it.
Singapore sling is a gin-based sling cocktail from Singapore.
It's gross. What? I'm talking about gin.
I know. I'm talking about the
Mezcal.
Singaporean government. It
Rubber band.
usually you put a maraschino cherry and pineapple in it.
So what is it? Gin, pineapple, and cherry?
Cherry liquor.
Cherry
liqueur.
Fuck,
or
man.
cherry brandy.
Once I get off these pain meds, let's try this.
Benedictine, grenadine, pineapple juice, fresh lime juice. Bitters.
Oh, we're gonna finish this book with Singapore slings, bud. It's gonna be fucking piss drunk.
And then
I'm gonna have to find out what mezcal is too. Not mescaline, mezcal.
mescal.
I think it's probably some kind of agave liquor.
I think you're right.
Well, I think this is supposed to be the word dwarf, but it says, the dwarf approached our table cautiously, as I recall. And when he handed me the pink telephone, I said nothing, merely listened. And then I hung up, turning to face my attorney. That was headquarters, I said. They want me to go to Las Vegas at once and make contact with a Portuguese photographer, Lem Lacerda. He'll have the details. All I have to do is check into my suite, and he'll seek me out. My attorney said nothing for the moment, and then he suddenly came alive in his chair. God, hell, he exclaimed. I think I see the pattern. This one looks like real trouble. He tucked his khaki undershirt into his white rayon bell-bottoms and called for more drink. You're going to need plenty of legal advice before this thing is over, he said. And my first advice is that you should rent a very fast car with no top and get the hell out of LA for at least 48 hours, he shook his head sadly. This blows my weekend because natural I'll have to go with you, and we'll have to arm ourselves.
Hell yeah, brother.
Why not, I said. If a thing like this is worth doing at all, it's worth doing right. We'll need some decent equipment and plenty of cash. On the line, if only for drugs and a super sensitive tape recorder for the sake of permanent record. Why aren't we using a tape recorder? That's my question.
Where's your tape recorder, bud?
My tape recorder, the bearing, what do you call it? The little like rubber band thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a bearing? What would you call that?
I wouldn't call it a bearing.
What would you call it?
Belt?
Yeah, but it's not a belt. It's just a rubber band.
I don't know. I don't know what piece you're talking about.
Fine. Yeah, I mean it is a belt. Anyway, it got loose.
Fix it.
Easier said than done to find like an old rubber band / belt for like a 1987 Sanyo tape recorder.
Custom build one, bud.
Custom build a rubber band.
Yeah, you take a rubber band and then you just you cut it and then you fuse it together. Dun, 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 dun.
What kind of story is this, he asked. The Mint 400, I said. It's the richest off-the-road race for motorcycles and dune buggies in the history of organized sport. A fantastic spectacle in honor of some fatback grossero named Del Webb, who owns the luxurious Mint Hotel in the heart of downtown Las Vegas. At least that's what the press release says. My man in New York has just read it to me. All right, I'm going to trade with you for a second, bud.
All right.
Ugh, I need some water. I can smell the wounds.
That's disgusting.
It's
Well,
life.
he said, as your attorney, I advise you to buy a motorcycle. How else can you cover a thing like this righteously? No way. Oh, sorry. No way, I said. I gotta work on my Hunter S. Thompson voice. No way, I said. Where can we get a hold of a Vincent Black Shadow? Oh, the light is terrible here. What's that? A fantastic bike, I said. The new model is something like 2,000 cubic inches, developing 200 brake horsepower
2,000 cubic inches.
at 4,000 revolutions per minute on a magnesium frame with 2 styrofoam seats and a total curb weight of exactly 200 pounds. That sounds about right for the gig, he said.
Sounds like an advertisement.
It is, I assured him. The fucker's not much for tuning, but it's pure hell on the straightaway. It'll outrun an F11 until takeoff. Takeoff, he said. Can we handle that much torque? Absolutely, I said. I'll call for New York for some cash. Chapter 2.
Whoa, we're ready to chapter 2.
How far you want to go, bud? Nice.
So we can't
I'm
until we
glad I
can't
put
hold on
ASMR
anymore.
streams on the stream. I put ASMR tags on the stream because I know you'd be coughing and burping into the mic.
That's the sound of
constantly.
mescal, pure mescal, folks.
Pure mezcal, which is an agave liquor. It's the only difference is it comes from a different agave plant than tequila, but same idea.
Disgusting. Well, we're gonna have to buy a bottle.
Well, we have
New bottle.
we don't really have a choice. It just must be done. You can go for chapter 2, bud.
Yeah, of course. I can take it back whenever you're ready.
Chapter 2: The seizure of $300 from a pig woman in Beverly Hills.
Holy shit.
The New York office was not familiar with the Vincent Black Shadow. They referred me to the Los Angeles bureau, which is actually in Beverly Hills, just a few blocks from the Polo Lounge. But when I got there, the money woman refused to give me more than $300 in cash. She had no idea who I was, she said, and by that time I was pouring sweat. My blood is too thick for California. I've never been able to properly explain myself in this climate. Not with soaking sweat, with the soaking sweat, the red eyeballs and the trembling hands. I took $300 and left. My attorney was waiting for me at the bar around the corner. This won't make the nut, he said, unless we have unlimited credit. I assured him that we would. You Samoans are all the same, I told him. You have no faith in the essential decency of the white man's culture. Jesus! Just 1 hour ago, we were sitting in there, in that stinking Bajino. Stone broken,
Jesus,
paralyzed.
what did you say?
Sterilized for the weekend. When a call comes through from some total stranger in New York, telling me to go to Las Vegas, and expenses be damned. And then he sends me over to some office in Beverly Hills where another total stranger gives me $300 raw cash for no reason at all. I tell you, my man, this is the American dream in action. We'd be fools not to ride this strange torpedo all the way out to the end. Indeed, he said. We must do it. Right, I said. But first we need the car, and after that, the cocaine. And then the tape recorder for special music, and the Acapulco shirts.
Acapulco.
Hell yeah. The only way to prepare for a trip like this, I felt, was to dress like human peacocks and get crazy. Then screech off across in the desert, cover the story, never lose sight of the primary responsibility. But what was the story? Nobody had bothered to say. So we would have to drum it up on our own. Free enterprise, the American dream, Horatio Alger gone mad on drugs in Las Vegas. Do it now. Pure gonzo journalism. There was also the socio-psychic factor. Now, every now and then, when your life gets complicated and the weasels start closing in, the only real cure is to load up on heinous chemicals and then drive like a bastard from Hollywood to Las Vegas, to relax, as it were, in the womb of the desert sun, to roll the roof back and screw it on, grease the face of the white tanning butter, and move out with the music at top volume, and at least a pint of ether. Getting hold of the drugs had been no problem, but the car and the tape recorder were not easy things to round up at 6:30 on a Friday afternoon in Hollywood. I already had one car, but it was far too small for the desert work. Far too small and slow for desert work. Then the Polynesian bar, where my attorney made 17 calls before locating a convertible with adequate horsepower and proper coloring. Hang on to it, I heard him say into the phone. We'll be over and then make the trade in 30 minutes. Then, after a pause, he began shouting, What? Of course the gentleman has a major credit card. Do you realize who the fuck you're talking to? Don't take any guff off that swine, I said, as he slammed the phone down. Now, we need a sound store with the finest equipment. Nothing dinky. We want one of those new Belgian Helowatts with the voice-activated shotgun mic for picking up conversations in the oncoming cars. We made several more calls and finally located our equipment in a store about 5 miles away. It was closed, but the salesman said he would wait, if we hurried. But we were delayed en route when a stingray in front of us killed a pedestrian on Sunset Boulevard. The store was closed by the time we got there. There were people inside, but they refused to come to the double glass doors until we gave it a few belts and made ourselves clear. Finally, 2 salespeople brandishing tire irons came to the door, and we managed to negotiate the sale through a tiny slit. Then they opened the door and just wide enough to shove the equipment out before slamming and locking it again. Now take the stuff and get the hell away from here, one of them shouted through the slit. My attorney shook his fist at them. We'll be back, he yelled. One of these days I'll toss a fucking bomb into this place. I'll have your name on this sales slip. I'll find out where you live and burn your house down. That'll give him something to think about, he muttered as we drove off. That guy is a paranoid psychotic anyway. They're easy to spot. We had trouble again at the car rental agency. After signing all the papers, I got in the car and almost lost control of it while backing across the lot to pump gas. The rental man was obviously shaking. Say there, you fellers gonna be careful with this car, aren't you? Of course. Well, good God, he said. You just backed over the 2-foot concrete embankment, and you didn't even slow down. 45 in reverse. You barely missed the pump. No harm done, I said. I always test a transmission that way. The rear end. 4 stress factors. Meanwhile, my attorney was busy transferring the rum and ice from the Pinto to the back seat of the convertible. The rental man watched nervously. Say, he said, are you fellas drinking? Not me, I said. Just fill the goddamn tank, my attorney snapped. We're in a hell of a hurry. We're on the way to Las Vegas for a desert race. What? Never mind, I said. We're responsible people. I watched him put the gas cap on. Then I jammed the thing into low gear and we lurched into traffic. There's another worry, said my attorney. He's probably all cranked up on speed. Yeah, you should have given him some more reds. Reds wouldn't help a pig like that, he said. To hell with him. We have a lot of business to take care of before we can get on the road. I'd like to get a hold of some priest robes. I said, they might come in handy in Las Vegas. You go?
Sure.
Switch to you. Midstream. Ruin the story.
But there were no my throat ready. Now open up that diaphragm.
You gotta do a little vocal warm up.
Ooh.
You gotta do your whale sounds. Okay, let's
But
go.
there were no costume stores open, and we weren't up to burglarizing a church. This fucking mosquito. Got him.
Oh, hell yeah. That's some gonzo journalism right there.
Hang on, I need to rip his limbs off.
Oh, you're such a psychopath.
Well, I don't want him to fucking. Yeah, I ripped all his legs off.
Just smash him. That's
I don't
the
wanna make a
ticket.
mess, man.
No, you just want to sprinkle the like you're the mosquito salt bay, just sprinkling mosquito legs all over the
Sprinkling
house.
the legs in the trash bag here.
All right, fair enough.
Why bother, said my attorney. You have to remember that a lot of cops are good, vicious Catholics. Can you imagine what those bastards would do to us if we got busted, all drugged up and drunk in some stolen investments? Jesus, they'd castrate us. You're right, I said. But for Christ's sake, don't smoke that pipe at stoplights. Keep in mind that we're exposed. He nodded. We need a big hookah. Keep it down here out of sight, under the seat. If anybody sees us, they'll think we're using oxygen. We spent the rest of the night rounding up materials and packing the car. Then, we ate the mescaline and went swimming in the ocean. Somewhere around dawn, we had breakfast at a Malibu coffee shop. Then drove very carefully around town and plunged into the smog-shrouded Pasadena freeway headed east. Wait, I just want to say that I've heard that mescaline is a very long trip. It's like 10 hours.
Ugh.
That's interesting.
Similar to acid, right?
Yeah.
Also can be a pretty long trip from what I've heard.
Yes, acid is quite long. But I've heard mescaline is less visual. Mescaline is like kind of like an old style drug. It's like something that, yeah, like from this era. Chapter 3. Strange medicine on the desert. A crisis of confidence. I'm still vaguely haunted by our hitchhiker's remark about how he'd never ridden in a convertible before. Here's this poor geek living in a world of convertibles, zipping past him on the highways all the time. He's never even ridden in one. It made me feel like King Farouk. I was tempted to have my attorney pull into the next airport and arrange some kind of simple common law contract whereby we could just give the car to this unfortunate bastard. Just say, here, sign this and the car's yours. Give him the keys and then just use the credit card to zap off on a jet to some place like Miami. Rent another huge fire apple red convertible for a drug-addled top-speed run across the water all the way out to the last stop in Key West. And then trade the car off for a boat. Keep moving. But this manic notion passed quickly. There was no point in getting this harmless kid locked up. And besides, I had plans for this car. I was looking forward to flashing around Las Vegas in this bugger. Maybe do a bit of serious drag racing on the strip. Pull up to that big stoplight in front of the Flamingo. Start screaming at traffic. All right, you chicken shit wimps. You pansies. When this goddamn light gonna flip, I'm gonna stomp down on this thing and blow every one of you gutless punks off the road. Alright. Challenge the bastards on their own turf. Man, have you been to Vegas?
No.
The Flamingo, like, this is so old, man. Like, the nice part of the strip right now is, I mean, I haven't been there in a few years, but, like, I think the part of Vegas that he was staying in hasn't been, like, cool for, like, since 25 years before we were born. Like, now those places are, like, the shitty old, like, grungy parts of Vegas. Vegas is a trippy place because there's, like, you got the new Vegas and you got, like, the old Vegas.
Yeah.
And the old is, like, really grungy, lots of, like, homeless people and, like, high high intensity gambling addicts.
Yeah.
The new shit is mostly like tourists and stuff.
Yeah, in New Vegas, you have a lot of fallout.
Is that a Fallout go?
Ha ha! Gotcha.
Jeez.
Jesus Christ.
Small pockets.
Anyway,
The
we'll
problem there.
make the trip sometime.
Yeah, we're gonna do a road trip. We'll do our own little Gonzo road trip one of these days. Hopefully with less mescaline.
More mezcal.
Yeah, more mezcal, less mescaline. That sounds all right.
Everyone goes to Vegas and they try to have this like crazy experience, and it's always like a little bit fucking sold out, man. Because it's like,
Oh, let's all just do the same fucking things. We all just get drunk and go to the strip clubs and go to the Golden Nugget and take selfies together.
Yeah.
Try and find some fat whore to take pictures with.
Well, they usually most people just go there to gamble, right? If they're
yeah,
over
a lot of
21.
people go there for like crazy adventures, but the adventures have already been done in Vegas. That's the thing.
I mean, the adventures are. I mean, the only real adventure I feel like you'd be able to have there is just like to get as debaucherous as possible. It's not like you're gonna
That's
like
what everyone tries to do.
go on like a crazy. I don't know. I guess for me, thinking of like an adventure is maybe I guess maybe it's just different definitions, but
The most debaucherous thing, shitload of alcohol, and guns and fireworks, and camping out in the Las Vegas desert.
that would be better than I think going and gambling in Vegas for me.
Well, man, some of those. What's cool about Las Vegas is, as much as there is all like the party scene and the places where you can go and drink, there's a lot of scum under the surface of Vegas.
Oh, hell yeah.
There's a lot of really dirty, nasty shit. Lots of homeless people. Lots of like hardcore gambling addicts that have been there for decades, have just like sold everything they own, and they've got nothing left. If you can like scrape the bottoms there, there's some grime to peel back there, man.
Sounds like some stories that need to be broken.
You go to like those bingo parlors for like
Yeah.
the 85-year-olds who are like ready to die.
Cigarette in one hand, oxygen tank in the other.
You fucking I'm not gonna say anything illegal.
B7. Oh, hell yeah, that's bingo, brother.
You find all like the really shitty casinos where all like the hardcore gambling addicts
Yeah.
go, and see how much they're willing to give you for like enough for them to get one more hit at the machine.
Nickel slots. Need to play them. Yeah, that's
what you
sad.
like, bud.
That's sad stuff.
You go to like the $3 all-you-can-eat buffets where all the old gambling addicts go in the real back-end corner of the old Las Vegas Strip. Ooh. You find all the performers, the people who failed out of Hollywood and made it into Vegas because they realized that they can actually make a living out there, taking their clothes off and fucking performing. Even though they'll never be famous and even though nobody will ever love them, they'll never be a success, they can perform even though they have to do terribly degrading shit. You find those stories, man.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some that do, like, I mean, a small percentage that do like make it out of there. Or if you don't have to degrade yourself, or whatever you're doing, you don't view it as necessarily degrading. I think there is something in that. It was like you found your like small niche market.
I'll show
But
you.
I'm sure
I'll
there's
show
a
you
lot
what I mean
of-
by degrading.
I
bud.
know. I'm sure I know exactly what you mean, and I'm sure that is
Do
part
ya?
of it. Yeah. No, I mean I don't know exactly, but I have some ideas.
The little like burlesque cabaret shows and the little like gay pirate shows and there's a lot of
People enjoy it, whatever. Whatever people are into, I'm not here to king share. I do hope that people
that's
don't.
what we got to scrape the bottom of, bud.
Oh, we'll be doing it.
We got to bring those people. We got to find the lowest of the low and then haul them out to the most touristy places just to shame all like the Midwestern Chinese fucking Los Angeles, Vancouver tourists out in the middle of the strip sitting outside the Fendi store and make them sit face to face with like
Your future.
the gambling trash, the people who lost their lives to this city.
This is what you're supporting. Yeah. Oh, we'll be once we get all vaxxed up, bud. Some of this stuff happens. We'll be able to travel out there.
Yeah, once we got that fucking autism.
No comment.
It's okay. Nobody's listening anyways. Right, Jeff Bezos? Let's see. Right. Challenge the bastards on their own turf. Come screeching up to the crosswalk, bucking and skidding with a bottle of rum in one hand, jamming the horn to drown out the music. Glazed eyes insanely dilated behind tiny black gold-rimmed greaser shades, screaming gibberish. A genuinely dangerous drunk, reeking of ether and terminal psychosis, revving the engine up to a terrible high-pitched chattering line, waiting for the light to change. Oh, hell yeah. How often does a chance like this?
Is this Ari minus the drugs and alcohol?
How often does... Yeah, if anyone doesn't know why I'm in so much pain or on so many painkillers and antibiotics, it's because of a motorcycle accident. That reminds me a lot of this story. How often does a chance like this come around? To jangle the bastards right down to the core of their spleens. Old elephants limp off to the hills to die. Old Americans go out to the highway and drive themselves to death with huge cars. But our trip was different. It was a classic affirmation of everything right and true and decent of this national character. It was a gross physical salute to the fantastic possibilities of life in this country, but only for those with true grit, and we were chock full of that. My attorney understood this concept, despite his racial handicap, but our hitchhiker was not an easy person to reach. He said he understood, but I could see in his eyes he didn't. He was lying to me. The car suddenly veered off the road, and we came to a sliding halt in the gravel. I was hurled against the dashboard. My attorney was slumped over the wheel. "What's wrong?" I called. "We can't stop here. This is bat country." "My heart," he groaned. "Where's the medicine?" "Oh," I said, "the medicine. Yes, it's right here." I reached in the kit bag for the animals. The kid seemed petrified. "Don't worry," I said. "This man has a heart. Bad heart. Angina pectoris. But we have the cure for it. Yes, here they are." I picked 4 animals out of the tin box and handed 2 to my attorney. He immediately cracked one under his nose, and I did likewise. He took a long snort and fell back on the seat, staring straight up at the sun. "Turn up the fucking music," he screamed. "My heart feels like an alligator." Well, that's a good quote. I'm going to say that from now on.
My heart feels like an alligator.
"Volume, clarity, bass. We must have bass." He flailed his naked arms at the sky. "What's wrong with us? Are we goddamn old ladies?" I turned both the radio and the tape machine up full bore. "You scurvy shyster bastard," I said. "Watch your language. You're talking to a doctor of journalism." He was laughing out of control. "What the fuck are we doing out here in this desert?" he shouted. "Somebody call the police. We need help." "Pay no attention to this swine," I said to the hitchhiker. "He can't handle the medicine." Actually, we're both doctors of journalism, and we're on our way to Las Vegas to cover the main story of the generation. I began laughing. My attorney hunched around his face to the hitchhiker. "The truth is," he said, "we're going to Vegas to croak a skag baron named Savage Henry. I've known him for years, but he's ripped us off. You know what that means, right?" I wanted to shut him off, but we were both helpless with laughter. "What the fuck were we doing out here in this desert when we both had bad hearts?" "Savage Henry has cashed his check," my attorney snarled at the kid in the back seat. "We're going to rip his lungs out." "And eat them," I blurted. "That bastard won't get away with this." What's going on in this country when a scum sucker like that can get away with sandbagging a doctor of journalism? Nobody answered. My attorney was cracking another animal, and the kid was climbing out of the back seat, scrambling down the trunk lid. "Thanks for the ride," he yelled. "Thanks a lot. I like you guys. Don't worry about me." His feet hit the asphalt, and he started running back towards Baker, out in the middle of the desert. Not a tree in sight. "Wait a minute," I yelled. "Come back and get a beer." But apparently he couldn't hear me. The music was very loud, and he was moving away from us at good speed. "Good riddance," said my attorney. "We had a real freak on our hands. That boy made me nervous." "Did you see his eyes?" He was still laughing. "Jesus," he said, "this is good medicine." I opened the door and reeled around the driver's side. "Move over," I said. "I'll drive. We have to get out of California before the kid finds a cop." "Shit. That'll be hours," said my attorney. "He's 100 miles from anywhere." "So are we," I said. At the top. Just at the top, bud. Just pass it. Exchange. Little language exchange.
Let's turn around and drive back to the Polo Lounge, he said. They'll never look for us there. I ignored him. Open the tequila, I said. I yelled as the wind scream took over again. I stomped on the accelerator as we hurtled into the highway. Moments later, we leaned over with the map. There's a place up ahead called Mescal Springs, he said. As your attorney, I'd advise you to stop and take a swim. I shook my head. It's absolutely imperative that we get to the Mint Hotel before the deadline for my press registration, I said. Otherwise, we might have to pay for our suite. He nodded. But let's forget that bullshit about the American dream, he said. The important thing is that the great Samoan dream. He was running around with a kit bag. I think it's about time to chew up a blotter, he said. Ugh. The cheap mezcal wore off a long time ago, and I don't know if I can stand the smell of that goddamned ether any longer. I like it, I said. We should soak a towel with the stuff.
What do you think ether smells like?
What it,
Like rubbing alcohol?
I assume it has like that style of like chemical smell, but I bet there's something else in there. Like I have no idea.
When I first read it, like 15 years ago. Fuck, I'm old.
I mean, I obviously don't know what it smells like, but I assume it's got some, like alcohol-y / like chemically, maybe a little sweetness.
They definitely sell it. It's a common solvent.
No. I bet it doesn't smell great.
Ethyl ether.
Don't huff it, folks. For some reason, your reader pushed me back.
Have you ever seen blotter before?
Not in person, no.
Oh, really?
Wait, maybe once at a festival. Someone offered me some, and I was like, no thanks. This is going to turn into like...
You just grabbed it
just put it in your tongue. You're like, no thanks.
I just put it all over my skin, and I was like, oh, no, that's okay. No, I knew that it would... This is probably a small... chance that it would happen like this, but I imagine it would turn out like Woodstock, where they're just like,
to anyone that took the brown acid, please go to the medical tent. Do not panic. Please quickly go to the medical tent.
And that would be me. So I didn't want to do that. So I didn't take it. But yeah, I guess I've seen it like maybe once. I like it, he said. We should soak a towel with the stuff and then put it on the floorboard. By the accelerator, the fumes will rise up in my face all the way to Vegas. He was running the tape cassette over, and the radio was screaming, "Power to the people, right on!" John Lennon's political song. 10 years too late. The poor fool should have just stayed where he was, my attorney said. Punks like that get in the way when they try to be serious. Speaking of serious, I said, I think it's about time to get the ether and the cocaine. Forget ether, he said. Let's save it for the soaking down in the suite, soaking down the rug in the suite. But here's this, your half of the sunshine blotter. Just chew it up like baseball gum. I took the blotter and ate it. My attorney was now fumbling with the salt shaker containing the cocaine, opening it, spilling it, then screaming and grabbing at the air. As our fine white dust blew up and out across the desert highway, a very expensive little twister rising up from the great red shark. Oh, Jesus, he moaned. Did you see what God just did to us? God didn't do that, I shouted. You did it. You fucking narcotics agent. I was on to your stinking act from the start, you pig. You better be careful, he said, and suddenly he was waving a fat, black 357 Magnum at me. One of those snub-nose Colt Pythons with the beveled cylinder. Plenty of vultures out here, he said. They'll pick your bones clean before morning. You whore, I said. When we get to the Las Vegas, I'll have you chopped into hamburger. What do you think the drug bund will do when I show up there with a Samoan narcotics agent? They'll kill us both, he said. Savage Henry knows who I am. Shit, I'm your attorney. He burst into wild laughter.
Who's Savage Henry?
I don't know yet. We'll see.
Oh, okay.
Henry Lee Lucas, probably.
Who?
Henry Lee Lucas is a serial killer. You're full of acid, you fool. It'll be a goddamn miracle if we can get the hotel and check in before you turn into a wild animal. Are you ready for that? Checking into a Vegas hotel under a phony name with the intent to commit capital fraud and a head full of acid? He was laughing again, and then he jammed his nose down towards the salt shaker, aiming the thin green roll of a $20 bill straight into what was left of the powder. How long do we have? I said. Maybe 30 more minutes, he replied. As your attorney, I advise you to drive at top speed. Las Vegas was just up ahead. I could see the strip/hotel skyline looming up through the blue desert ground haze. The Sahara, the landmark, the Americana, the ominous Thunderbird. A cluster of gray rectangles in the distance, rising out of the cactus. 30 minutes. It was going to be very close. The objective was a big tower of the Mint Hotel downtown. If we didn't get there before we lost all control, there was also the Nevada State Prison upstate in Carson City. I had been there once, but only for a talk with the prisoners, and I didn't want to go back. For any reason at all. So there's really no choice. We would have to run the gauntlet, and the acid be damned. Go through all the official gibberish, get the car into the hotel garage, work out the desk clerk, deal with the bellboy, sign in for press passes, all of the bogus. Totally illegal. A fraud on its face. But of course, it would have to be done.
Kill the body and the head will die. This line appears in my notebook for some reason. Perhaps some connection with Joe Frazier. Is he still alive? Still able to talk? I watched that fight in Seattle. Horribly twisted. About 4 seats down the aisle from the governor. A very painful experience in every way. A proper end to the 60s. Tim Leary, a prisoner of Eldridge Cleaver in Algeria. Bob Dylan clipping coupons in Greenwich Village. Both Kennedys murdered by mutants. Owsley folding napkins in Terminal Island. And finally, Cassius Ali belted incredibly off his pedestal by a human hamburger. A man on the verge of death. Joe Frazier, like Nixon, had finally prevailed for reasons that people like me refuse to understand. At least not out loud. I don't know anything about these fights or what the fuck they're talking about. This is way over my head.
I mean, I'm not a boxing enthusiast, but I've watched a couple of those fights. I mean, I watched Rumble in the Jungle. I mean,
Is that a fight or a movie?
yeah, it's a fight. There's a lot of interesting stuff. I think actually,
Is that the one with Paul Logan?
yeah, before all our boxers were fucking YouTube stars.
Now this news. TikToker decides to become boxer. TikToker challenges Joe Biden to a fight.
Former SpongeBob dancer challenges Joe Biden to a boxing match for sniffing her hair.
Well, I think the interesting thing is now that like this has evolved into purely like base entertainment of like, I hate this like stupid guy who filmed a dumb video on YouTube, so I want to see him fight and I hope he loses or I hope he wins, blah blah blah. Whereas like, I mean, surrounding like just Muhammad Ali, which you mentioned there, like the amount of like very important political change and like debate and discussion that went around just around him and like boxing in general during that time was like fascinating. And now it's just a spectacle, kind of a joke. Like, I mean, it is a joke sport. It's like, I don't have stats on it, but I can say with pretty large certitude that a decent amount of those matches are fixed.
You saying UFC or boxing or everything?
Boxing, but it would not surprise me. I've heard people put forward arguments that like pretty much all major sports are fixed to some degree. Like, not like they know who will win the game, but they'll cover the spread or blah 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 blah. So I mean, I'm just stuff I heard, but boxing and soccer are two pretty notorious ones for fixing.
All right, are we gonna watch that soccer thing on Monday?
We sure could. Stream that too.
Could.
We couldn't stream it, but we could stream ourselves talking over it.
Hey everybody, we know you're watching the game right now. Do you want to hear two guys that don't know very much about soccer talking about it?
Would you like to hear two guys that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about instead of two guys that,
I'll just be like, oh, the dude with the cool hair is going real fast.
the guy in the blue striped uniform seems like he's not pacing himself well. Yeah, well, yeah, we should. I mean, yeah, I'll probably watch it.
I know more about literature and politics than I do about sports. I'll say that.
Sport ball.
But that was some other era. Burned out and long gone from the brutish realities of the foul year of our Lord, 1971. A lot of things had changed in those years. And now I was in Las Vegas as the motorsports editor of this fine, sleek magazine that had sent me down here in the Great Red Shark. For some reason, nobody had claimed to understand. Just check it out, they said, and we'll take it from there. Indeed, check it out. But when we finally arrived at the Mint Hotel, my attorney was unable to cope artfully with the registration procedure. We were forced to stand in line with all the others, which proved to be extremely difficult under the circumstances. I kept telling myself, be quiet, be calm, say nothing, speak only when spoken to. Name, rank, and press affiliation, nothing else. Ignore this terrible drug. Pretend it's not happening. It sounds difficult. There's no way to explain the terror I felt when I finally lunged up to the clerk and began babbling. All my well-rehearsed lines fell apart under that woman's stony glare. Hi there, I said. My name is, Raoul Duke. Yes, on the list, that's for sure. Free lunch, final wisdom, total coverage, why not? I hear my attorney. Oh, I have my attorney with me. And I realize, of course, that his name is not on the list. But we must have that suite, yes. The man is actually my driver. We brought this red shark all the way from the strip, and now it's time for the desert, right? Yes, just check the list and you'll see. Don't worry. What's the score here? What's next? The woman never blinked. Your room's not ready yet, she said. But there's somebody looking for you. No! I shouted. Why? We haven't done anything yet. My legs felt rubbery. I gripped the desk and sagged towards her as she held out the envelope, but I refused to accept it. The woman's face was changing, swelling, pulsing. Horrible green jaws and fangs jutted out, the face of a moray eel, deadly poison. I lunged backwards into my attorney, who gripped my arm as he reached out to take the note. I'll handle this, he said to the moray woman. This man has a bad heart, but I have plenty of medicine. My name is Dr. Gonzo. Prepare our suite at once. We'll be in the bar. The woman shrugged as... So first, this is my attorney, also driver. And he introduces himself. I'm his doctor. In a town full of bedrock crazies, nobody even notices an acid freak. We struggled through the crowded lobby and found 2 stools at the bar. My attorney ordered 2 Cuba Libres. Oh, that sounds nice. With beer and mezcal on the side. And then he opened the envelope. Who's Lacerda, he asked. He's waiting for us in a room on the 12th floor. And by the way, I think I'm getting addicted to sugar really badly.
That's a random thing to say.
Because every time I hear fucking talk about Cuba Libres or whatever, just wanted fucking sugar, man.
You just start scratching your arms. You're like, the bugs are back, man. I gotta get them fixed, dude.
I definitely need a lot of sugar.
Cut back on a little bit.
No. I'm gonna wait until all my skin's grown back first.
I think that's probably fair. You have to hold yourself to that, though. Because you give yourself allowances. That's how we get serial killers, Ari. Just a little bit more, and next thing you know, you're running a Scarface empire of powdered sugar
I'm gonna ignore
all
what you're
across
saying right
southern Taiwan.
I couldn't remember. Lacerda, the name rang a bell, but I couldn't concentrate. Terrible things were happening all around us. Right next to me, a huge reptile was gnawing on a woman's neck. The carpet was a blood-soaked sponge, impossible to walk on it, no footing at all. Order some golf shoes, I whispered. Otherwise, we'll never get out of this place alive. You notice these lizards don't have any trouble moving around in this muck. That's because they have claws on their feet. Lizards, he said. If you think we're in trouble now, wait till you see what's happening in the elevators. He took off his Brazilian sunglasses, and I could see he'd been crying. I just went upstairs to see this man Lacerda, he said. I told him we knew what he was up to. He said he's a photographer, but when I mentioned Savage Henry, well, that did it. He freaked. I could see it in his eyes. He knows we're on to him. Does he understand we have magnums? I said. Oh.
That's
No.
what we're using that soundproof room for, baby.
I assume he needs magnum guns.
Yeah.
No.
He had the 357 earlier, so that's what I'm assuming as well.
357 is like the extra thicks, right? No, but I told him we had Vincent Black Shadow. That scared the piss out of him. Good, I said, but what about our room and the golf shoes? We're right in the middle of envelope. A fucking reptile zoo. And somebody's giving booze to these goddamn things. It won't be long before they tear us to shreds. Jesus, look at the floor. Have you ever seen so much blood? How many have they killed already? I pointed across the room to a group that seemed to be staring at us. Holy shit, look at that bunch over there. They spotted us. That's the press table, he said. That's where you have to sign in for our credentials. Shit, let's get it over with. You handle that. I'll get the room. Chapter 4. Hideous music and the sound of many shotguns. Rude vibes on a Sunday evening in Vegas. We finally got into the suite around dusk, and my attorney was immediately on the phone to room service, ordering 4 club sandwiches, 4 shrimp cocktails, a quart of rum, and 9 fresh grapefruits. Vitamin C, he explained. We'll need all that we can get.
It's like the fruity version of Joe Rogan. Vitamin D, vitamin C. Can't be getting scurvy.
I would love some vitamin C right now.
Pineapple in the fridge, bud.
I would love another popsicle with fruit in it.
Yeah, went back a page.
No. The second paragraph, chapter 4.
Yeah, went back 2 pages. I agreed. But by this time, the drink was beginning to cut down the acid, and my hallucinations were down to a tolerable level. The room service waiter had a vaguely reptilian cast to his features, but I was no longer seeing the huge pterodactyls lumbering around the corridors in the pools of fresh blood. The only problem was a gigantic neon sign outside the window, blocking our view of the mountains. Millions of colored balls running around a very complicated track, strange symbols and filigree, giving off a loud hum. "Look outside," I said. "Why?" "There's a big machine in the sky, some kind of electric snake, coming straight at us." "Shoot it," my attorney said. "Not yet," I said. "I want to study its habits." He went over to the corner and began pulling on a chain to close the drapes. "Look," he said, "you've got to stop all this talk about snakes and leeches and lizards and all that stuff. It's making me sick." "Don't worry," I said. "Worry? Jesus, I almost went crazy there in the bar."
Wait, hang on 1 second. I'm going to change the title if we can. Can we change the title? Because it doesn't say what book we're reading.
Oh boy, well, I'm just in the middle, yes. Okay.
What does it say now?
I just added the book title. Took off the date and put the title.
Oh, it hasn't updated here, but that's fine. I trust you.
Give her a sec. I'll double check.
Can you hear my
Just to
audio?
make sure. Yeah, should be okay.
Double check. Just to make sure.
Turn that nastiness off.
I did.
All right. Back into it.
Before
Alright,
I was
folks.
Before I was so rudely interrupted.
trying to make the stream better, Ari. Buh. Trying to give the listeners more information. Buh. Worry? Jesus, I almost went half crazy down there in the bar. If you let us back in the place, not after your scene at the press table. What scene? You bastard, he said. I left you alone for 3 minutes. You scared the shit out of those people, waving that goddamn marlin spike around and yelling about the reptiles. You're lucky I came back in time. They were ready to call the cops. I said you were only drunk and that I was taking you up to your room for a cold shower. Hell, the only reason they gave us the press passes was to get you out of there. He was pacing around nervously. Jesus, that scene straightened me right out. I must have some drugs. What have you done with the mescaline? The kit bag, I said. He opened the bag, and ate 2 pellets while I got the tape machine going. Maybe you should only eat one of those, he said. The acid's still working on you. I agreed. We have to go back to the track before dark, I said. But we have to watch the TV news. Let's carve up this grapefruit and make fine rum punch. Maybe toss in a blotter. Where's the car? We gave it to somebody in the parking lot, he said. I have the ticket in my briefcase. What's the number? I'll call down and have them wash the bastard. Get rid of the dust and grime. Good idea, he said. But he couldn't find the ticket. Well, we're fucked, I said. We'll never convince them to give us the car without proof. He thought for a moment, then picked up the phone and asked for the garage. This is Dr. Gonzo in 850, he said.
Dr. Gonzo.
I seem to have lost my parking stub for the red convertible I left with you, but I want the car washed and ready to go in 30 minutes. Can you send up the duplicate stub? What? Oh? Well, that's fine. He hung up and reached for the hash pipe. No problem, he said. That man remembers my face. That's good, I said. They'll probably have a big net ready for us when we show up. He shook his head.
A big net.
To catch them. He's saying they remember his face and they're gonna get him when they get down there.
They're gonna get him.
Gonna get him. He shook his head. As your attorney, I advise you not to worry about me. The TV news about the Lao invasion, a series of horrifying disasters, explosions and twisted wreckage, men fleeing in terror, Pentagon generals babbling insane lies. Turn that shit off, screamed my attorney. Let's get out of here. A wise move. Moments after we picked up the car, my attorney went into a drug coma and ran a red light on Main Street before I could bring us under control. I propped him up in the passenger seat and took the wheel myself. Feeling fine, extremely sharp. All around me in traffic I could see people talking, and I wanted to hear what they were saying. All of them. But the shotgun mic was in the trunk, and I decided to leave it there. Las Vegas was not the kind of town where you want to drive down Main Street aiming a black bazooka-looking instrument at people. Turn up the radio. Turn up the tape machine. Look into the sunset up ahead. Roll the windows down for a better taste of the cool desert wind. Ah, yes, that's what it's all about. Total control now. Tooling along the main drag on a Saturday night in Las Vegas. 2 good boys in a fine fire apple red convertible. Stoned, ripped, twisted. Good people. Great God! What is this terrible music? The battle hymn of Lieutenant Calley? As we go marching on. When I reach my final campground in that land beyond the sun, and the commander asks me, what did he ask you, Rusty? Did he ask you to run? Did he ask you to fight, or did he ask you to run? And what the hell did you tell him, Rusty? We responded to the rifle fire with everything we had. I don't know that song either.
I'm so confused right now.
It's a song that he's listening to, but I don't know that song. No! I can't be hearing this. It must be the drug. I glanced over at my attorney, but he was staring up at the sky, and I could tell that his brain had gone off to that campground beyond the sun. Thank Christ he can't hear the music, I thought. It would drive him into a racist frenzy. Mercifully, the song ended, but my mood was already shattered, and now the fiendish cactus juice took over, plunging me into a subhuman funk as we suddenly came upon the turnoff to the Mint Gun Club. 1 mile, the sign said, but even a mile away I could hear the crackling scream of 2-stroke bike engines winding out and then coming closer. I heard another sound. Shotguns. No mistaking that flat hollow boom. I stopped the car. What the hell is going on down there? I rolled up the windows and eased down to the gravel road, hunched low on the wheel until I saw about a dozen figures pointing shotguns in the air and firing at regular intervals. Standing on a slab of concrete out here in the Mesquite Desert, this scraggly little oasis in the wasteland of northern Vegas, they were clustered, with their shotguns about 50 yards away from one-story concrete block house, half shaded by 10 or 12 trees, and surrounded by cop cars, bike trailers, and motorcycles. Of course, the Mint Gun Club. These lunatics weren't letting anything interfere with their target practice. Here were about 100 bikers, mechanics, and assorted motorsport types milling about in the pit area, signing up for tomorrow's race, idly sipping beers and appraising each other's machinery. And right in the middle of all this, oblivious to everything but the clay pigeons flying out of the traps every 5 seconds or so, the shotgun people never missed a beat. Well, Why not? I thought. The shotgun the shooting provided a certain rhythm, sort of a steady bass line to the high-pitched chaos of the bike scene. I parked the car and wandered into the crowd, leaving my attorney in his coma. I bought a beer and watched the bikes checking in. Mini 405 Husqvarnas. High-tuned Swedish Fireballs. Also many Yamahas. Kawasaki's. A few Triumph 500 Triumphs. Micas. Here and the CZ. Here and there.
Husqvarna.
A CZ.
Maybe.
And a Persang. All very fast. Super light dirt bikes. No hogs in this league. Not even a Sportster. That would be like entering our great shark in the dune buggy competition. Maybe I should do that, I thought. Sign my attorney up as the driver and send him out to the starting line with a head full of ether and acid. How would they handle it? Nobody would dare go on the track with a person that crazy. He would roll off the first turn and take about 4 or 5 of the dune buggies on a kamikaze trip. What's the entry fee? I asked the desk man. $2.50, he said. What if I told you I had a Vincent Black Shadow? He stared up at me, saying nothing. Not friendly. I noticed he was wearing a .38 revolver on his belt. Forget it, I said. My driver's sick anyway. His eyes narrowed. Your driver ain't the only one sick around here, buddy. He has a bone in his throat, I said. What? The man was getting ugly, but suddenly his eyes switched away. He was staring at something else. My attorney was no longer wearing his Danish sunglasses, no longer wearing his Acapulco shirt. A very crazy-looking person, half naked and breathing heavily. What's the trouble here? He croaked. This man is my client. Are you prepared to go to court? I grabbed his shoulder and gently spun him around. Never mind, I said. It's the Black Shadow. They won't accept it. Wait a minute, he shouted. What do you mean they won't accept it? Have you made a deal with these pigs? Certainly not, I said, pushing along towards the gate. But you notice they're all armed. We're the only people here without guns. Can you hear that shooting over there? He paused and listened for an instant, then suddenly began running towards the car. You cocksuckers! He screamed over his shoulder. We'll be back! By the time we got the shark back on the highway, he was able to talk. Jesus Christ! How do we get mixed up in all that gang of psychotic bigots? Let's get the fuck out of this town. Those scumbags were trying to kill us.
There's a lot of weird nonsense in this book.
Well, it is what it is.
Chapter 5. Covering the story. A glimpse of the press in action. Ugliness and failure. The racers were ready at dawn. Fine sunrise over the desert. Very tense, but the race didn't start until 9. So we had to kill about 3 long hours in the casino next to the pits. And that's where the trouble started. Hang on. Lean on my fucking... My limp arm here. The bar opened at 7. There was also a coffee and donut canteen in the bunker. But those of us who had been up all night in places like the Circus were in no mood for coffee and donuts. We wanted a strong drink. Our tempers were ugly, and there were at least 200 of us, so they opened the bar early. By 8:30, there were big crowds around the crap tables. The place was full of noise and drunken shouting. You know Circus is still around, right?
Circus?
Yeah.
Not Cirque du Soleil?
Circus is one of the shittier hotels there.
Oh.
I remember the last time I went to Vegas, it was like $20 or $30 a night in Vegas.
Oh, hell yeah. That's cheap.
It's very cheap because it's very grungy.
Well, and they also want you to
Gamble.
Yeah, exactly. They want you to spend your money.
Yeah, but a lot of the nicer casinos, they don't give a shit because you'll go there because it's a nice atmosphere. Like, whether or not you actually stay there, it's like a totally different story.
Yeah.
So, but that one is, let's just say it's like the older part of the Las Vegas. Like, it's part of the strip, the newer strip, but it's like part of the older part. It's grungy. It's, yeah.
I like a little grunge. Anything too clean just reminds me of a hospital.
We'll check it out. Abby can drive. We can drink.
We'll get lit off of all that agave liquor.
All of mescal. Bring some beetle nut. A bony middle-aged hoodlum wearing a Harley Davidson did I say Harley Davidson?
Harley Davidson.
A Harley Davidson t-shirt boomed up to the bar and yelled, "God damn, what day is this, Saturday?" More like Sunday, somebody replied. "Ha, that's a bitch, ain't it?" The HD boomer shouted to nobody in particular. "Last night, I was out home in Long Beach." This is him. Who's talking right now? The same guy. "And somebody said they were running the Mint 400 today. So I says to my old lady, 'Man, I'm going.'" He laughed. "So she gives me a lot of crap about it, you know. So I started slapping her around. The next thing I knew, two guys I never even seen before got me on the sidewalk working me over. Jesus, they beat me stupid." He laughed again, talking to the crowd and not seeming to care who listened. "Hell yeah," he continues. Then one of them says, "Where you going?" And I says, "Las Vegas to the Mint 400. So they gave me $10 and drove me down to the bus station." He paused. "At least I think it was them. Well, anyways, here I am. And I tell you, that was one hell of a long night, man. 7 hours in that goddamn bus. But when I woke up, it was dawn. And here I was in downtown Vegas for a minute. I didn't know what the hell I was doing here. All I could think of was, oh, Jesus, here we go again. Who divorced me this time?" He accepted a cigarette from somebody in the crowd, still grinning as he lit up. "But then I remember, by God, I was here for the Mint 400. Man, that's all I needed to know. I tell you, it's wonderful to be here, man. I don't give a damn who wins or loses. It's just wonderful to be here with you." Nobody argued with him. We all understood. In some circles, the Mint 400 is a far, far better thing than the Super Bowl, the Kentucky Derby, and the Lower Oakland Roller Derby finals all rolled into one.
Nothing beats that.
The Lower
Oakland roller derby. It's a beautiful sport.
This race attracts a very special breed, and our man in the Harley t-shirt was clearly one of them. The correspondent from Life nodded sympathetically and screamed at the bartender, "Senzaman Vasinits." What the fuck does that mean?
I don't even know what you said.
Senzaman Vasinits.
Sezaman.
Fast up with it, I croaked. Why not 5? I smacked the bar with my open bleeding palm. Hell yes, bring us 10.
Hell yeah.
All back at the Life man screamed. He was losing his grip on the bar, sinking slowly to his knees, but still speaking with definite authority. "This is a magic moment in sport. It may never come again."
That's one of my favorite lines to use when it's not like about sports. Is like, "Well, folks, this is a magical moment in sports."
Senzaman Vasinits.
Sansaban Fascidids!
Then his voice started to break. "I once did the Triple Crown," he muttered. "But it was nothing like this." The frog-eyed woman clawed feverishly at his belts. "Stand up," she pleaded. "Please stand up. You'd be a very handsome man if you just stand up." He laughed distractedly. "Listen, madam," he snapped. "I'm damn near intolerably handsome. Down here where you'd go crazy if I stood up." The woman kept pulling at him. She'd been mooning at his elbows for 2 hours, and now she was making a move. The man from Life wanted no part of it, and he slumped deeper into his crouch. I turned away. It was all horrible. We were, after all, the absolute cream of the national sporting press. And we were gathered here in Las Vegas for this very special assignment to cover the 4th annual Mint 400. And when it comes to things like this, you don't fool around. But now, even before this spectacle got underway, there were signs that we might be losing control of the situation. Here we were on this fine Nevada morning, the bright, cool dawn on the desert, hunkered down at some greasy bar at a concrete blockhouse and gambling casino called the Mint Gun Club, about 10 miles out of Vegas. And with the race about to start, we were dangerously disorganized. Outside, the lunatics were playing with their motorcycles, taping the headlights, topping off oil in the forks, last-minute bolt tightening, carburetor screws, manifold nuts, and the first 10 mics blasted off at the stroke of 9. It was extremely exciting, and we all went down to watch. The flag went down, and these 10 poor buggers popped their clutches and zoomed in the first turn all together, and then somebody grabbed the lead, a 405 Husqvarna, as I recall, and went up. Cheer went up as the rider screwed it on and disappeared in a cloud of dust. "Well, that's that," somebody said. "They'll be back around in an hour, so let's go back to the bar."
Sounds like my kind of day.
Just watch the start and then Dipset.
Yeah. You just see one and then it's good. But not yet. No. There was something like 190 more bikes waiting to start. They went off at 10 at a time, every 2 minutes. At first it was possible to watch them out to a distance of some 200 yards from the starting line, but this visibility didn't last long. The third brace of 10 disappeared into the dust about 100 yards from where we stood. And by that time they'd sent off about the first 100, with about another 100 to go. Our visibility was down something like 50 feet. We could see as far as the hay bales at the end of the pits. Beyond that point, the incredible dust cloud would hang over this part of the desert for the next 2 days, was already formed up solid. None of us realized that at this time this was the last we would see of the fabulous Met 400.
Why? Why?
I don't know. Let's see. By noon, it was hard to see the pit area from the bar casino, 100 feet away from the blazing sun. The idea of trying to cover this race in any conventional press sense was absurd. It was like trying to keep track of a swimming meet at the Olympic-sized swimming pool filled with talcum powder instead of water. The Ford Motor Company had come through, as promised, with the press Bronco and a driver, but after a few savage runs across the desert, looking for motorcycles and occasionally finding one, I abandoned this vehicle to the photographers and went back to the bar. At this time, I felt for an agonizing reprisal of the whole scene. The race was definitely underway. I had witnessed the start. I was sure of that much. But what now? Rent a helicopter? Get back on the stinking Bronco? Wander out into the goddamn desert and watch these fools race past checkpoints? One every 13 minutes? By 10, they were spread out all over the course. It was no longer a race. Now, it was an endurance contest. The only visible action was the start and finish line, where every few minutes, some geek would come speeding out of his dust cloud and stagger off his bike, where his pit crew would gas it up and then launch it back onto the track with a fresh driver. For another 50-mile lap, another brutal hour of kidney-killing madness out there in the terrible, dust-blind limbo.
Sounds awful.
Yeah, riding through the desert for a long time doesn't sound great.
Riding on a horse.
Riding dirt bikes.
You can whip your Porsche.
Oh.
Can't nobody
sing songs on a stream. Somewhere around 11, I made another tour of the press vehicle, where we were all all we found were two dune buggies full of what looked like retired petty officers from San Diego.
Yeah, brother.
They cut us off from the dry wash and demanded, "Where is the damn thing?" "Beats me," I said. "We're just good patriotic Americans like yourself." Both of the buggies were covered with ominous symbols: screaming eagles carrying American flags in their claws, a slant-eyed snake being chopped into bits by a buzzsaw made of stars and stripes, and one of the vehicles had what looked like a machine gun mounted on the passenger side. They were having a bang-up time, just crashing around the desert at top speed and hustling anybody they met. What outfit you fellows with?" one of them shouted. The engines were all roaring and we could barely hear each other. "The sporting press," I yelled. "We're friendly, hired geeks." This is very slow at turning the page. Dim smiles. "If you want a good chase," I shouted, you should get after that skunk from CBS News up ahead with a black Jeep. He's the man responsible for the selling of the Pentagon." "Hot damn," two of them screamed at once. "A black Jeep, you say?" They roared off, and so did we, bouncing across the rocks and scrub, oak and cactus, like iron tumbleweeds. The beer in my hand flew up and hit the top, then fell in my lap and soaked my crotch with warm foam. "You're fired," I said to the driver. "Take me back to the pits." It was time, I felt, to get grounded, to ponder this rotten assignment and figure out how to cope with it. Lucida insisted on total coverage. He wanted to get back to the dust storm and keep trying for some rare combination of film and lens that might penetrate this awful stuff. Joe, our driver, was willing. He was not really Joe. His name was not really Joe, but that's what we had been instructed to call him. I had talked to the FOMOCO boss the night before, and when he mentioned the driver he was assigning to us, he said, his real name is Steve, but you should call him Joe. Why not? I said. We'll call him anything he wants. How about Zoom? No dice, the Ford man said.
Zoom is only allowed in China.
You're not allowed to call him Zoom unless you're in China. It has to be Joe. Serena agreed, and sometime around noon he went out on the desert again in the company of our driver Joe. I went back to the Blockhouse Bar Casino, which was actually the Mint Gun Club, where I began to think heavily, and make many heavy notes.
See, this book is very confusing and doesn't always seem to be going somewhere.
Do we need to call it soon? How much?
Let's go 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. We'll go to 7 o'clock.
Read one more.
Yeah,
One more chapter.
Sure.
All
Do
right.
one more chapter. Chapter 6. A night on the town. Oh, hell yeah. Confrontation at a desert inn.
Woo!
Drug frenzy at Circus. Saturday, midnight. Memories of this night are extremely hazy. All I have for guide pegs is a pocket full of Keno cards and cocktail napkins, all covered with scribble notes. Here's one. Get the Ford man. Demand a Bronco for race observation purposes. Photos? Lacerda call. Why not a helicopter? Get on the phone. Lean on the fuckers. Heavy yelling. Another says, sign on Paradise Boulevard. Stopless and topless. Bush League sex compared to L.A. Pasties here. Totally naked public humping in L.A. Las Vegas is a society of armed masturbators. Gambling is the kicker here. Sex is extra. Weird trip for high rollers. House whores for winners. Hand jobs for the bad luck crowd. A long time ago, when I lived in Big Sur, down the road from Lionel Ole, I had a friend who liked to go to Reno for crap shooting. Switching hands here. And once a month he drove his Mercedes Highway Cruiser to Reno on 3 consecutive weekends, winning heavily each time. After 3 trips, he was something like $15,000 ahead, and he decided to skip the 4th weekend, take some friends to dinner at Nepenthe. Always quit winners, he explained, and besides, it's a long drive. On Monday morning, he got a call from Reno, from the general manager of the casino he'd been working out on. We missed you this weekend, said the GM. The pitmen were bored. Shucks, said my friend. So the next weekend, he flew up to Reno in a private plane with a friend and 2 girls, all special guests of the GM. Nothing too good for the high rollers. And on Monday morning, the same plane, the casino's plane, flew him back to the Monterey airport. The pilot lent him a dime to call his friend for a ride to Carmel. He was $30,000 in debt, and 2 months later, he was looking down the barrel of one of the world's heaviest collection agencies. So he sold his store, but that didn't make the nut. They could wait for the rest, he said, but then he got stomped, which convinced him that maybe he'd be better off borrowing enough money to pay the whole wad. Mainline gambling is a very heavy business, and Las Vegas makes Reno seem like your friendly neighborhood grocery store. For a loser, Vegas is the meanest town on earth. Until about a year ago, there was a giant billboard on the outskirts of Vegas saying, "Don't gamble with marijuana. In Nevada, possession 20 years. Sale, life." So I was not entirely at ease drifting around the casinos on this Saturday night with a car full of marijuana and a head full of acid. We had several narrow escapes. At one point, I tried to drive the great red shark into the laundry room of... You smell that?
Yeah, they're cooking.
Cooking garlic.
Smell good, boy.
But the door was too narrow, and the people inside seemed dangerously excited. We drove over to the Desert Inn to catch the Debbie Reynolds Harry James show. Who the fuck are these people?
Hell yeah, Debbie Reynolds.
Who's Debbie Reynolds?
No idea.
I don't know about you, I told my attorney, but in my line of business, it's important to be hip.
Is he saying hepatitis? Hip? I don't know. Mine too, he said, but as your attorney, I advise you to drive over to the Tropicana and pick up Guy Lombardo. He's in the blue room with his fellow Canadians. Hey, the Tropicana, I think they renovated it about 10 years ago.
It's a lot of in a lot of gangster movies too, I believe.
Tropicana. It's one of the old ones. It's still like at the front end of the strip there, but
That's something we need to watch again too.
what?
Some of the classic gangster movies.
Like what?
Casino, Goodfellas. I don't know. There's a lot.
8 Mile.
Hell yeah.
Ooh.
Go. Are you gonna rap? You want to rap it? I can beatbox for you, Ari.
No, let's not. I'll read one page and then I'll give it to you.
All right.
Why? I asked. Why what? Why should I pay out my hard-earned dollars to watch a fucking corpse? Look, he said. Why are we out here? To entertain ourselves or to do the job? The job, of course, I replied. We were driving around in circles, weaving through the parking lot of a place I thought was the Dunes, but it turned out to be the Thunderbird, or maybe it was Hacienda. My attorney was scanning the Vegas visitor, looking for hints of action. How about Nickel Nick Slot Arcade, he asked. Hot slots, that sounds heavy. 29-cent hot dogs. Suddenly, people were screaming at us. We were in trouble. 2 thugs wearing red gold military overcoats were looming over the hood. What the hell are you doing? One screamed. You can't park here. Why not? I said. Seemed like a reasonable place to park. Plenty of space. I've been looking for a parking lot for what seemed like a very long time. Too long. I was about ready to abandon the car and call a taxi, but yes, then we found this space, which turned out to be a sidewalk in front of the entrance to the Desert Inn. I had run over so many curbs by this time that I hadn't even noticed this last one. Now, we had found ourselves in a position that was hard to explain, blocking the entrance. Thugs yelling at us. Bad confusion. My attorney was out of the car in a flash, waving a $5 bill. We want this car parked. I'm an old friend of Debbie's. I used to romp with her. For a moment, I thought he had blown it. Then one of the doormen reached out for the bill. Okay, I'll take care of it, sir. And then he tore off a parking stub. Holy shit, I said as we hurried through the lobby. They almost had us there. That was quick thinking. What do you expect, he said. I'm your attorney, and you owe me $5. I want it now. I shrugged and gave him a bill. This garish, deep Orline carpeted lobby of the Desert Inn seemed like an inappropriate place to be haggling about nickel-dime bribes for the parking lot attendant. This was Bob Hope's turf. Frank Sinatra. Spiro Agnew's. The lobby fairly reeked
Of high-grade formica and plastic palm trees. It was clearly a high-class refuge for big spenders. We approached the grand ballroom full of confidence, but they refused to let us in. We were too late, said the man in a wine-colored tuxedo. The house was already full. No seats left, at any price. Fuck seats, said my attorney. We're old friends of Debbie's. We drove all the way down from L.A. for this show, and we're goddamn well going in. The tux man began jabbering about fire regulations, but my attorney refused to listen. Finally, after a lot of bad noise, he let us in for nothing, provided we will stand quietly in the back and not smoke. We promised, but the moment we got inside, we lost control. The tension had been too great.
They just like yelled at the guy like, I used to have sex with the owner of this casino. Let me in right now.
Me and Debbie hung out all the time. We're gonna control ourselves.
We used to romp.
And we used to romp all over town. The tension had been too great. Debbie was yucking across the stage in a silver afro wig to the tune of Sgt. Pepper from the Golden Trumpet of Harry James. Jesus.
So Debbie's the performer, not the owner.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe both. I don't know. Jesus creeping shit, said my attorney. We've wandered into a time capsule. Heavy hands grabbed our shoulders, and I jammed the hash pipe into my back pocket just in time. We were dragged across the lobby and held against the front door by goons until our car was fetched up. Okay, get lost, said the wine tux man. We're giving you a break. If Debbie has friends like you guys, she's in the worse trouble than I thought. We'll see about this, my attorney shouted as we drove away. You paranoid scum! I drove around to the Circus Casino and parked near the back door. This is the place, I said. They'll never fuck with us here.
Maybe it was scummy back then too.
Maybe it was. I don't know. Good question.
Definitely
We may have
scummy
to do. This may peak a lot of Las Vegas research that we need to do.
No, we don't need to do any research. We just show up there and
I
figure
mean, when we go, obviously.
in-person research.
Historical research, though, is what I'm saying. I don't want to know what it's like now. I just
Now
wanna
that they
go.
have Uber, man, we don't even need. It's cool to rent a car there because you can yell at people, and do all this kind of stuff, drive on curbs and shit like that. But on the other hand, it's expensive to park there.
Yeah.
It's like $25 a night at some places.
Just go there and rent scooters.
I wonder if they have motor parking. That could be interesting.
Yeah, you got to find somewhere to park, though. You also have to. I think a lot of it is walkable, right?
Yes.
Again, I've never been, but
Yeah, a lot of it's. But when you say walkable, it's like, yeah, you can walk it, but to go like up and down the strip, like from end to end, just even like the main part of the strip takes probably like an hour.
yeah.
So if you're like pissed drunk or you're like causing trouble, you don't necessarily want to be like walking the length of it back and forth
Well,
constantly.
we would never do either of those things, Ari. Well, I agree. We'll plan it out. We would love to hear some suggestions from our fans.
No, we wouldn't.
We always love to hear from you folks.
We don't want to hear anything you have to say.
Ari doesn't even have a say in this because he doesn't run any of the social media accounts.
He doesn't even have a
or
driver's
the email.
license.
Ari doesn't even have ears. He doesn't know how to listen. He doesn't know what the internet is.
Ari's passport was revoked years ago, folks.
He's never coming back to the U.S., folks. He's stuck out here.
Ari's on an Interpol watch list right now.
Where's my ether, my attorney said. This mescaline isn't working. I gave him the key to the trunk and I lit up the hash pipe. He came back with the ether bottle.
Mescal or mescaline?
Mescaline. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
Came back with the ether bottle, uncapped it, and then poured some on a Kleenex and mashed it under his nose, breathing heavily. I soaked another Kleenex and fouled up my nose. The smell was overwhelming, even with the top down. Soon we were staggering up the stairs towards the entrance, laughing stupidly and dragging each other along like drunks. This is the main advantage of ether. It makes you behave like the village drunkard in some early Irish novel. Total loss of all basic motor skills. Blurred vision, no balance, numb tongue. Severance of all the communication between the body and the brain. Which is interesting, because the brain continues to function for more or less normally. You can actually watch yourself behaving in this terrible way, but you can't control it. You approach the turnstiles into the circus. You know that when you get there, you have to give the man $2 or he won't let you inside. But when you get there, everything goes wrong. You misjudge the distance to the turnstile and slam against it, bounce off and grab a hold of an old woman to keep from falling. Some angry Rotarian shoves you and you think,
Angry what?
Rotarian. Rotarian. Rotrician?
I don't know. I don't know that word.
Rotarian, right?
Weird.
And think, what's happening here? What's going on? Then you hear yourself mumbling, dogs fucked the Pope. No fault of mine. Watch out! Why money? My name is Brinks. I was born... Born? Get sheep overside. Women and children to armored car. Orders from Captain Zeep. Devil ether. A total body drug. The mind recoils in horror, unable to communicate with the spinal column. The hands flap crazily, unable to get the money out of the pocket. Garbled laughter and hissing from the mouth, always smiling. Ether is the perfect drug for Las Vegas. In this town, they love a drunk, fresh meat, so they put us through the turnstiles and turn us loose inside. The circus is what the whole heap world will be doing on a Saturday night if the Nazis had won the war. This is the Sixth Reich. The ground floor is full of gambling tables, like all of the other casinos. But this place is about 4 stories high, in the style of a circus tent, and all manner of strange county fair, Polish carnival madness is going on up in this space. Right above the gambling tables are 40 flying Gazito brothers are doing a high wire trapeze act, along with 4 muzzled wolverines and 6 nymphet sisters from San Diego. And so you're down on the main floor playing blackjack and the stakes are getting high when suddenly you chance to look up and there right smack dab above your head is a half-naked 14-year-old girl being chased through the air by a snarling wolverine, which is suddenly locked in a death battle with 2 silver-painted Polacks who come swinging down from the opposite balconies and meet in midair on the wolverine's neck. Both Polacks seize on the animal as they fall straight downwards towards the craps table, but they bounce off a net. They separate and spring back up towards the roof in 3 different directions. And just as they're about to fall again, they are grabbed out of the air by 3 Korean kittens and trapezed off to one of the balconies. This madness goes on, but nobody seems to notice. The gambling action runs 24 hours a day on the main floor, and the circus never ends. Meanwhile, on the upstairs balconies, the customers are being hustled by every conceivable kind of bizarre shuck. All kinds of funhouse type booths. Shoot the pasties off the nipples of a 10-foot bull dyke and win a cotton candy goat. Stand in front of the fantastic machine, my friend, and for the 99 cents your likeness will appear, 200 feet tall, on a screen above a downtown Las Vegas. 99 cents more for the voice message. Say whatever you want, fella. They'll hear ya. And don't worry about that. Remember, you'll be 200 feet tall. Jesus Christ. I could see myself lying in a bed in the Mint Hotel, half asleep and staring idly out the window, when suddenly a vicious Nazi drunkard appears 200 feet tall in the midnight sky, screaming gibberish at the world. Woodstock Uberales! We will close the drapes tonight. A thing like that could send a drug person careening around the room like a ping pong ball. Hallucinations are bad enough. But after a while, you learn to cope with things like that, like seeing your dead grandmother crawling up your leg with a knife in her teeth. Most acid fanciers can handle this sort of thing. But nobody can handle the other trip. The possibility that any freak with $1.98 can walk up into the circus and suddenly appear in the sky over the downtown Las Vegas, 12 times the size of God, howling anything that comes out of his head. No, this is not a good town for psychedelic drugs. Reality itself is too twisted.
Good mescaline comes on slow. The first hour is all waiting. Then about halfway through the second hour, you start cursing the creep who burns you because nothing's happening. And then zang! Fiendish intensity. Strange glow and vibrations. A very heavy gig in a place like the circus. I hate to say this, said my attorney as we sat down at the merry-go-round bar on the second balcony, but this place is getting to me. I think I'm getting the fear. Nonsense, I said. We came out here to find the American dream. And now that we're right in the vortex, you want to quit. I grabbed his bicep and squeezed. You must realize, I said, that we found the main nerve. I know, he said. That's what gives me the fear. The ether was wearing off. The acid was long gone, but the mescaline was running strong. We were sitting at a small round gold formica table, moving in orbit around the bartender. Look over there, I said. 2 women fucking a polar bear. Please, he said, don't tell me those things. Not now. He signaled the waitress for 2 more wild turkeys. Wild turkeys whiskey?
Yep.
This is my last drink, he said. How much money can you lend me? Not much, I said. Why? I have to go, he said. Go? Yes, leave the country, tonight. Calm down, I said. You'll be straight in a few hours. No, he said. This is serious. George Molesky was serious, I said. And you see what they did to him. Don't fuck around, he shouted. 1 more hour in this town and I'll kill somebody. I could see he was on the edge. That fearful intensity that comes at the peak of a mescaline seizure. Okay, I said. I'll lend you some money. Let's go outside and see how much we have left. Can we make it, he said. Well, that depends on how many people we fuck between now and when we get to the door. You want to leave quietly? I want to leave fast, he said. Okay. Let's pay this bill and get up very slowly. We're both out of our heads. This is going to be a long walk. I shouted at the waitress for the bill. She came over looking bored, and my attorney stood up. Do they pay you to screw that bear? He asked her. What? He's just kidding, I said, stepping between them. Come on, Doc, let's get downstairs and gamble. I got him as far as the edge bar and the rim of the merry-go-round, but he refused to let go until it stopped turning. It won't stop, I said. It's never going to stop. I stepped off and turned around to wait for him, but he wouldn't move, and before I could reach out and pull him off, he was carried away. Don't move, I shouted. You'll come around. His eyes were staring blindly ahead. squinting with fear and confusion, but he didn't move a muscle until he'd made the whole circle. I waited until he was almost in front of me. Then I reached out to grab him, but he jumped back and went around the circle again. This made me very nervous. I felt on the verge of a freak-out. The bartender seemed to be watching us. Carson City, I thought. 20 years. I stepped on the merry-go-round and hurried around the bar, approaching my attorney on his blind side. When we came to the right spot, I pushed him off. He staggered into the aisle and uttered a hellish scream as he lost his balance and went down, thrashing into a crowd, rolling like a log. Then up again in a flash, fists clenched, looking for somebody to hit. I approached him with my hands in the air, trying to smile. "You fell," I said. "Let's go." By this time, people were watching us, but the fool wouldn't move. I knew what would happen if I grabbed him. "Okay," I said. "You stay here and go to jail. I'm leaving." I started walking towards the stairs, ignoring him. This moved him. "Do you see that?" he said, as he caught up with me. "Some son of a bitch kicked me in the back." "Probably the bartender," I said. "He wanted to stomp you for what you said to the waitress." "Good God, let's get out of here. Where's the elevator?" "Don't go near that elevator. That's just what they want us to do. Trap us in a steel box. Take us down to the basement." I looked over my shoulder, but nobody was following. "Don't run," I said. "They'd like an excuse to shoot us." He nodded, seeming to understand. We walked fast along a big indoor midway shooting galleries, tattoo parlors, money changers, cotton candy booths. Then out through a bank of glass doors and across the grass downhill to a parking lot where the Red Shark waited. "You drive," he said. "I think there's something wrong with me." And that's chapter 6, folks.
We done did it. We're gonna be doing more of this book soon. We'll figure out a schedule, but during
So much is
lockdown
left.
we should have a lot of time to do this. And like I said, you guys can
We're
always
about 30% done with the book.
okay. So we'll probably do a couple more of these streams. Okay. But yeah, and then after we finish this book, we'll move on to some other yuck 'em up books, and maybe we'll even let people write in their comments on the old Twitch stream and have a little discussion with us.
Did
If
you
you
not
are
open comments?
sufficiently loyal. We did, but all the people watching right now are just
Bots.
patiently viewing it like good little listeners.
All right, good night.
Love you guys. Talk to you soon.